In this video, I want to show you the cheat codes to starting and finishing tracks faster. That includes shortcuts, secrets, and tools that most producers don't know about. So while they spend 10 hours EQing each snare and taking forever to finish a song, your finished projects folder will be filling up with high quality tracks that you're happy with. The fourth shortcut in this video is so overpowered and almost no producers know it. The most common first step and where most producers get stuck is with the melody. Don't fall into the trap of going to try and find some really cool sound or really cool plugin right from the start. I recommend going and grabbing something simple, just like an FL Keys or a piano plugin, because a simple sound like a piano is so easy to understand and it's going to make it easy to write chords and a melody. You don't need to know any music theory to create good melodies quickly. One of the first things you can do is go and grab a chord tool by clicking this arrow, clicking view, clicking scale highlighting, and clicking whichever scale you want to produce in. This chart shows you what kind of emotions you're going to get from each scale. I'm just going to grab C minor melodic, and as you can see, all the notes in the background that are highlighted are in this scale, so I'm never going to place a wrong note. I've got these root notes, and I'm going to go and create chords out of these root notes by just placing notes in the scale. So by following the notes in the background, I have this chord progression here. And this is only 4 bars, but if I wanted to make this 8 bars, I can duplicate it and go and change around some of these notes to add some progression to the melody. If you want to make melodies even faster, there's a new tool that was added by FL Studio. If you click on this tool thing here and you click generate chord progressions, you're able to go and select whichever scale you want to produce in. Let's just do the same one and say C minor, for example. And just like that, it creates a chord progression for you. And if you want there to be 8 bars, just like the one I created, you change this to 8. And that saves so much time versus going and doing it manually. And something else you can do is go and use a MIDI pack. For example, this is out of the Emotional Essence library. I'm going to grab the first one. We have a great melody there, and as you can see, these chords sound so realistic because it's a little bit of staggering to the timing. It also comes with live vocals like these, which you can pair with this melody, which makes it so much easier to create a melody filled with life. Once you have your chord progression, these are all triads. I'm gonna grab the bottom note of each chord, hold down shift and drag it down an octave. So these are gonna act as root notes. And you can go up higher to add a counter melody. And one interesting thing about this counter melody, as you can see, we have this descending chord here. It's going from a G sharp down to an F and an A sharp down to a G, but the counter melody is going from a C up to an F. So they're doing different things and going in different directions, which adds a lot of depth to it. Just going back to this chord progression from before, if you want to turn a chord progression into a more kind of energetic melody, what you can do is select every note in the chord progression and click Alt A or whatever the arpeggiator tool is in the DAW that you use, and you have this arpeggio here. And there are so many settings you can mess with to turn this chord progression quickly into a melody. Something else you can do is go and grab the slice tool and go and slice up some of these chords, just like this. So even though it's still a kind of basic chord progression, it still has a lot of melodic elements going on inside it. So hopefully when you use these tricks, you're left with a chord progression and or melody that you can use to start your track and build your beat around. If you want to kind of randomize your melody from here, go and pick a preset or a plugin that has an arpeggiator built in. For example, I just picked this arpeggio here, and this is going to go and almost randomize this melody. I want the main part of my melody to be this really wide chord progression here with this pad. And then we have the top melody, which is this here, which I'm going to raise an octave. I think it's really important to separate the octave ranges of your melody. For example, there's a lot of high notes hitting up here in this top melody. whereas the pad is hitting down at a lower octave here, which is going to really separate the frequency bands of these melodies, and it's going to make it so much easier to mix. You've probably noticed a lot of hit songs recently have a lot of live vocals and live samples. You can go and rip something off the internet or find some old song, but chances are you're going to get sued trying to use it. So one thing you can do is go and get a sample library like the Emotional Essence library, which has tons of live vocals and live guitar like this. For example, you can grab these live vocals here and the live guitar, and then just go and grab any kind of preset or sound that you like and drag the MIDI right on top of it. And this is such an amazing starting point when creating a melody, and it's all 100% royalty free. So the link will be in the description if you want to get the Emotional Essence library. Let me know which way you think is better to create melodies, using the chord highlighting tool, using the chord tool built into a DAW, using a MIDI pack, or building a melody around a live vocal or live sample. So now that you have your melody ready, I'm going to go and add some drum samples and drum sequences to this track. One thing that will save you so much time is having high quality drum samples that are ready. I'm just grabbing these from the Emotional Essence library, but wherever you get your samples from, make sure that they're high quality, make sure that there's no harsh frequencies that will make it hard to mix, make sure that the 808s are tuned to C. All of these things will save you so much time. I'm gonna grab a fat 808 like this. I'm gonna grab an artificial sounding clap like this, and then also a kind of more realistic sounding clap like that. Crash, a crisp hi-hat, and also one with a bit of texture to it. Punchy kick, a transition like this, crisp snare, and a more kind of realistic sounding snare. Now, one of the quickest ways to speed up your drum creation process is if you were to use some kind of drum MIDI pack. For example, I'm going to grab this hi-hat MIDI here and just drag it on top of a hi-hat. And just like that, I reckon this hi-hat sequence sounds great, but if you wanted to do it manually, what I would do is add a 2-step hi-hat sequence, open it in the piano roll, select your magnet to half step, and then go and start slicing up some of these. You can leave it as a 2-step hi-hat sequence, but it will sound so much better with different fills like that. I'm going to change it to 1/3 just at the end here, and go and add this fill. Creating a kick sequence can take some time, so go and click record, and you're going to want to have a look at the comma button on your keyboard, which is C5, and then you're going to click the space bar and immediately start recording a kick sequence. Now this here will save you so much time. Go and copy this kick and paste it on top of the 808. And then what we're going to do with this 808 is we're going to follow these ghost notes in the background, which means that this 808 is going to be in the right scale and in the right key. Like that, you have a fire 808 sequence that follows the kick without spending ages. If you wanted to detach it from your kick, you can go and change around the timing of some of the notes, like this here, for example. And one thing I like adding is like a triple kick leading into an 808, like this, for example. It builds anticipation leading into the 808, and it makes the kick and 808 sound so hard when they finally come in together. I'll start with a simple snare sequence. For the open hi-hat, there's two main places I like to actually put it. One is right before the snare, and the other is a little bit further back. So I like doing a bit of a mixture of both. Crash at the start. I like to grab a slightly lighter snare, like this one here, and use this to just add some fills. Just gonna add this perk in here. I'm just going to add this lower pitch hi-hat sequence here, and maybe we'll use it later in the track. If we decide to take the hi-hat out, we can have this instead as a substitute, which is just going to kind of blend into the background. And just like that, this track is ready to mix. And this is where some producers will just leave the track as an 8-bar loop, or they'll get stuck mixing it, or they'll make lots of mixing mistakes and release a song that isn't ready to be released. So we're gonna make sure none of that happens. First thing to do is double click and select all layers, do Ctrl-Shift-L, which is gonna send all of them to the mixer track. One thing that's definitely recommended is going and grabbing the stereo separation knob and dragging it all the way up, which is gonna make the track 100% merged. So if you have a listen to it, your left and right ear are hearing the same thing, which is going to make it a little bit easier to understand where the levels are at and what needs to be changed as far as the EQ goes. At this point, I like to turn my headphones or speakers up quite a lot so I can hear what's happening. And I like to start by mixing the melodies quite low. With wide melodies like this, it can be smart to grab an EQ and cut some of the lower frequencies off. As you can see, this is in the bass section here, so this doesn't really change how the melody sounds, but it cuts off lots of frequencies that could be clashing with the bass later on. So we have all these melodies mixed. They're not all going to be coming in at the same time. So I'm just going to grab some of the main ones and use those while I'm mixing the drums, just so I can tell what's happening. This 808 already has quite a lot of distortion, but if it didn't, I'll definitely go and add a little bit of it to make it sound a bit more wide. I'm going to add a teeny bit of reverb to this clap. Leveling is incredibly important, even if you have to go through 10 times and slightly tweak some of the volumes to make all of these layers sound good together. It's definitely worth doing, because if your levels are off, it's going to completely ruin the track. As you can see, the final volume of this track here, it's around -6 decibels, which gives us quite a lot of room to go through and use a maximizer or a soft clipper to go and boost the volume. There are a couple ways to do this. One surprisingly common way is to just go and grab a soft clipper and increase the post. As you can see, this has boosted the volume to around -2 decibels, and the final mix sounds pretty good. It's not a free plugin, but I like using Isotope Ozone 9, and the built-in maximizer has a really good finished mix. Now we can go and set the stereo separation back to normal, and this is what the final mix sounds like. It sounds good, but it's obviously incredibly crowded because all the layers are coming in at the same time. And that brings us to one of the most important steps, because this is where most producers get stuck. I'm going to split this pattern by channel. I'm going to click on the top layer, hold down Shift, click on the bottom layer, and go and drag all of these layers in. And this is basically our finished 8-bar loop. This is where most tracks go to die. So it's very important to know how to turn this into a finished song. One thing I'm going to do is just quickly duplicate everything, take out all the drums, and this is the 8-bar intro here. If you don't want to have an intro with just the melody, you wouldn't do that. You'd bring all the drums back in. And if you want it to be like a 4-bar intro or a 16-bar intro, you can go and do that just by changing the length of the intro at the start. Now for most tracks, this here, when the beat comes in, is also when the artist is going to come in, and you really don't want to have a massive beat with all these layers coming in, as well as the vocals on top of it, because they're really going to clash. Most tracks start with a verse, and I like to have a very simple kind of beat there with a very raw melody. So I'm going to cut out a lot of the kind of wider elements. We can bring some of those elements in later. I'm also cutting out this hi-hat, and I'm going to cut out some of these hi-hats at the end here. Kind of sounds almost like a mini drop. And we can also go and add a bit of a snare roll here. We also have this transition from before, which I'm going to drag in here, and this adds a lot of anticipation and build up into the drop. I'm going to take the beat out here. And And then we have this kind of hook section here, which is quite a lot wider, and everything's all coming in at once. I'm gonna go and duplicate this, and then go and duplicate it again. And as you can see, this track is around 3 minutes long, which is perfect. If you're looking to send this beat out to an artist or vocalist and you're not sure how they arrange their tracks, go and download that song or the instrumental, go and drag it in and match it to the BPM, and then go and check the arrangement for that song and match it to your own if you wanted inspiration or to copy the arrangement from that song. I hope you used what you learned in this video to make finished tracks very quickly. If you want to get the Emotional Essence library, click the link in the description to get it for 80% off today. There's over 10,000 royalty-free samples and MIDI for all types of emotions. If you want to learn to make beats like top producers, click one of the recommended videos and I'll see you there.